over the past several weeks with all our wonderful volunteers. We have an office here in downtown Mount Horeb with a storefront and signs to get people excited about the election. And this morning we have not one but two special guests. So first I am going to introduce our representative in the U.S. Congress, Representative Mark Pocan, who has been doing an amazing job representing us for however many years by now, 10 years. Definitely vote for Mark. And Mark is going to get us going here a little bit and then introduce our next special guest. So please take it away, Mark.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And it's good to be with you all again. I know we were with you guys at another launch on a nice Saturday morning outside of a house. But since you're my neighbors, you get me a couple more times living in the town of Vermont. Thank you for what you're doing. This is really the crucial, we're 10 days to Election Day. Some people count Election Day, said be 11. I'm thinking of it as 10 days to the day, and then we all got to do a lot on that day. But it's all about get out the vote. Everything that you're doing right now. We know people agree with us on the issues, but if they don't come out and vote, it kind of doesn't matter, right? We need them to be able to do that, and this last contact is what's so very important. So, I was asking a little bit what you're hearing, and some people are ready to vote up and down the line. Some people are still deciding. If you need a closing argument, tell them that the social media companies are watching this very closely, and if you don't vote on Election Day, the political commercials continue for you. So the only way you get rid of political commercials is to vote, and if you don't, you're going to get them over and over. It'll be Groundhog's Day the rest of your life. So, okay, maybe not exactly, but whatever you need to do to find out what is going to motivate people to do that final effort to make sure they're voting. They can vote early right now, and that's the best thing, because then they don't have to think about it on November 8th. But I really appreciate your efforts today and any other shifts that you can do between now and November 8th. So thank you very much. And I'm going to introduce Aaron Richardson, who Aaron is the mayor in Fitchburg and is the Democratic nominee for state treasurer. As you know, Sarah Godlewski was our state treasurer, or is our state treasurer, but is not running again. It's important that we have the constitutional offices as well, because there's important responsibilities with each and every one, and it's important that we've got people who care about them and not just caring about a very narrow special interest view of how to execute that job. So I'm going to have to leave right away because we're heading to Dodgeville next. They have an in-between shift. Normally these are 9 and 12. They have a 10 o'clock, so we're going to keep moving. But it's my honor to introduce our next state treasurer, Aaron Richardson. See you all later. Sorry.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Actually, I didn't tell Tim this, but my mom and stepdad lived in Mount Horeb, actually just south of town over by Covenville in the country. And my stepdad's owned that for 25, 30 years, something like that. So to me, I come to Mount Horeb quite a bit and enjoy the community quite a bit. Like Mark said, I'm the mayor in Fitchburg and have been for 3.5 years. I also work in the Oregon School District. And so right now I work in the tech department, help fix Chromebooks and answer questions, help teachers when they have issues with their computers as well. Something that I started in that department right after COVID. With COVID, we're coming back from COVID. A lot of people were still online at that point in time, and a lot of people were. It was a lot busier time in the tech department right then. And I think that as treasurer, it's so important that I have not only the experience running a city like Fitchburg, but also working in the school district, because I see how both of those areas are being starved out of funding. And that's because of the Republicans in the Senate and the Assembly. They do not give us more money to keep hiring, giving raises to staff. In fact, 8 out of the 16 school districts in Dane County have a referendum this fall. And that's not to build buildings, that's to give raises to teachers. And our teachers need our support, and they need us. And I see that even on the other side, for our cities, our villages, our towns, they aren't getting more money either. And the Republicans want to talk about defunding police, but the reality is that because we don't get more money from them, we can't hire more firefighters, more police officers, EMS, public works, parks, all of our departments. Really, they're defunding the services, even though they're blaming it on Democrats. So that's why it's so important that not only our statewide candidates, Governor Evers and Mandela and Josh Culp, our local candidates as well, like Mike Barr, Diane. Those people are so critically important as well because they are really starving us for funds, which is really unfortunate. So for myself, we've got a $28 million budget in Fitchburg. We're just wrapping that up right now. And yesterday I had the privilege of actually going with Governor Evers on his bus tour. I got to jump on the school bus and we went to Fond du Lac and Oshkosh and Appleton, Manitowoc, and Cedarburg. It was a long day. But it was exciting because everywhere we went, it was packed houses, people were excited, enthusiastic, and when I see that, and the people on the bus are telling me, these are bigger crowds than it was 4 years ago. So that's a great thing to hear, that people are more fired up, they're more excited than ever before. This afternoon I'm going to Milwaukee for the event with President Obama. I'm very excited about that as well.
Where's it going to be in Milwaukee?
It's going to be at a high school in Milwaukee. I think North Shore or something like that.
Mandela going to be there too?
Mandela will be there. Governor Evers will be there.
He's terrific.
Josh Paul. Oh yeah, I mean, it's so critically important that not only do we have our statewide offices, but we get a new senator in Wisconsin.
The lies and outright lies, and it's ridiculous.
It's really unfortunate what they're doing to them, and they're essentially
fear, and that's their big man. They don't have a program for anything.
Yeah. So, that's for me, it's exciting when I'm going across the state. I'm going to offices just like this, and I see people are working hard. They're knocking doors, they're making phone calls, and that's throughout the state. And so when I see all that, I look at the polls and go, I don't believe these, to be honest. I don't think that they're really capturing how fired up and how hardworking the Democrats are throughout the state. And I also have talked to some people that are Republicans that have told me, this isn't my party. This isn't what I grew up in. And I'm embarrassed by Ron Johnson.
Yeah.
I'm not going to vote for him. And so, they're telling me that. I don't know that they tell a lot of people that, especially someone calling them on the phone and asking them in the polling. So I do feel like, maybe I'm being optimistic, but I do feel like we're going to outperform all those polls. But we got to make sure people get and vote. And that's part of the reason why President Obama is coming in and coming to Milwaukee, is because Milwaukee, we need to get people out there, just like we do throughout the state. And four of the last 6 presidential elections in the state of Wisconsin were decided by less than 1 percentage point. The 2 that weren't is President Obama. He essentially a landslide victory, getting 3%, 4% victories in this state because we are so purple. And it's great to see him and some other people like Bernie Sanders that are here and understand how important it is for us in the state. And it's every community that's important. So thank you very much for all of your work, for all of your efforts, because this is really where the rubber hits the road and we can really make a difference. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time. If you have questions, I can answer those, but I really appreciate being here.
Can you speak on your travels yesterday to the youth vote or the turnout of the youth at the rallies? And what do we know about them registering?
Yeah.
They didn't vote last time.
Yeah, and I think that Friday, the first few were in the middle of the day. Some schools had school yesterday, some didn't. So there wasn't necessarily... It was people who were older in general, but there were some people there. In our last stop in Cedarburg, there was a lot more people there. I do know in Appleton, Lawrence University had a bunch of students there, so that was good to see that at least on that campus they are getting excited and fired up. There's actually a group of students at UW La Crosse who I met way back 9 months ago, and very enthusiastic and energetic, and they've actually got behind me and some other candidates as well, but they started a Students for Richardson group, and they got a flag, and I've seen them a few times now, and I think there are groups like that as well that are on the campus level and trying to do some of that. it's a challenge because 2 years ago was COVID.
Yeah.
And so the campuses didn't do all the election stuff. So those students that were in school at that point in time didn't do that and they're maybe junior seniors now, but they don't have that knowledge of, oh, we need to do this and this and this and this. So I know that the party is trying to help them out and trying to get them more interested and tell them what to do and how to do that.
And here in Mount Horeb, we have had an inordinate number of high school students
Yeah.
canvassing. They're super excited. They come in through a government affairs class, but then I've had a few email me this week saying, I already did my hours for the class, can I come back? And we say, of course you can.
That's fantastic. There's a junior in Oregon that has reached out to me and asked how he can help, and I've been trying to get him connected with
Yeah.
some of the canvassing groups as well.
Can you talk about the mobilizing effect of Roe v. Wade versus the economy? I mean, and especially in independent voters. That kind of worries me, the economy and Roe v. Wade and
Yeah, I think.
independents, how they'll turn out.
Yeah, I think that Roe v. Wade is getting a lot of people essentially pissed off and coming out to vote.
Right.
And I think that there is definitely a lot of people that are not happy about Roe v. Wade. Now the economy, that's the other side of it. There are some people who want to blame essentially gas prices on Democrats, but I also look at that and I was frustrated that I didn't see anything in the media that talked about, OPEC a month ago said, we're going to cut how much production we're doing.
Right.
Well, they're doing that to raise prices because who do they want to win? Republicans.
Yeah.
So they're doing it for political reasons. I didn't see them getting called out for that.
Yeah.
But that's what's frustrating to me is that there are things out there that we don't have control over gas prices. You look at
Michael's God, he's ridiculous.
Michael's is terrible. He doesn't even live in Wisconsin. I'm the fifth generation of my family to live in Fitchburg, actually. But you look at all the statewide candidates.
He wanted to make it as high as possible so he can make more money.
Well, and
So
I
far
know
on.
yesterday Governor Evers was talking about, he sends his kids to private school in Connecticut, which if he wants to, that's your right. If you want to do that, it costs $47,000 a year to send your kids to those schools. The Milwaukee public schools, they only get about $18,000 per student.
Wow.
So when you look at something like that, his school that he can afford to send his kids to is spending 3 times the amount on students that the Milwaukee students are, and he doesn't care, and he is okay with cutting funding. And I think the governor even says something about how Michaels wants to cut funding for schools even more. He's trying to force choice in private schools,
that's what he wants.
and
He's a moron.
it's just if they're going to cut funding to our school districts, I don't know how you can keep operating our schools.
Yeah.
When you have 8 out of 16, Oregon, we're doing a referendum, and our business person said that there's 421 school districts in the state, and if something doesn't change with funding, we see a lot of referendums this year. There's going to be about 421 referendums in the next year or two if there's nothing changes, because there's already 100-something this fall alone, and you said Mount Horeb has one as well.
Yep,
Yeah.
we do. We got some.
Do we have the League of Women Voters brochure on the election where the candidates stand? I read that recently, and no comment from Michaels, no comment from the idiot, Ron Johnson.
Yeah.
No, what would you do? No comment.
Yeah.
They refuse to say anything because they have no plan.
We see that with a lot of the Republican candidates in all offices where they don't want to do debates.
Yeah.
You see that in the 3rd Congressional District. Derek Orden is afraid to debate Brad Paff.
Van Orden.
They won't answer questions. They're really just trying to essentially hide in their house, maybe go to special invite-only fundraisers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Pick
not-
the audience.
Mhm.
Where you got stuck with a Ray Tay group here tonight.
No,
Anyone who's got.
no, this is great.
So, Aaron, could you briefly speak on the importance of treasurer office? And because I think it flies under the radar for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the most important thing that the treasurer does is they sit on the Board of Commissioner of Public Lands, and that group actually provides funding to school district libraries throughout the state. And to me, that's the most important thing that the treasurer does. That's I think in almost all cases throughout the state, the only funding the libraries get in the schools is from that. I know that in next year we're going to have about $13 million more than last year to distribute to schools. I think it's up to $53 million that we'll have. And so continuing to give as much money as we can to our schools is something incredibly important to me. And working in a school district, I see how important that is. Another thing that they do with that fund is they actually can provide low interest loans to communities to do infrastructure projects. Oh, cool. And so it's a funding vehicle for other municipalities, especially smaller ones that might not have other means of raising money. And so that's another thing that they do. Other than that, I see the role as being someone who is kind of checks and balances a little bit on the budget and things that are happening in the legislature, try to explain the budget and what's going on and how it impacts your communities as well. So I see that as a big role. They have stripped a lot of the duties from the role, unfortunately, which is very frustrating that way. And so that I do think though that Sarah Galuski has done a great job, and she's done a lot with home ownership and helping people stay in their homes. I'm going to continue all the great work she's done. I want to also help support programs that communities throughout the state are doing to increase home ownership. That's something that I'm trying to do in Fitchburg. We're trying to pilot a program right now that we're calling a rent-to-own program, where the city is going to buy like 10 condos and we'll rent those out to people to start off. It'll be a maximum of a third of their income, so they're not house poor, they can afford medications, school supplies, whatever that might be. And then a portion of that rent actually goes towards a down payment, and in 7 to 10 years, they're gonna have a 20% down payment, and they can then purchase that from the city. They don't need private mortgage insurance, they have a lot more flexibility in their financing, and now they own that, and they're building generational wealth. And you're really, I think, changing people's lives when they can actually get into ownership. It's incredibly difficult to buy a home now in Dane County than ever before. Prices have skyrocketed. A lot of people want to be here. It's a great place to live. But I want to support programs like that communities are doing. That's not necessarily the right program, and we're trying to figure out all the details ourselves. But programs like that are helping to increase home ownership. Financial literacy is another thing that I think the treasurer should be a part of. And so I've talked with one of the credit unions, one of the biggest credit unions in the state, headquartered in Dane County. They don't want me to say who they are yet, but they want to work for financial literacy, and they said that if I'm elected, they'll give me all the materials that they have that we can put on our website. And it's for adults, for kids, teachers to use with kids, and have it in English and Spanish already. So it's automatically in 2 languages. I'll work with them to translate into Hmong as well. That's another language I think is really important throughout the state. So those are a couple of things that I want to do in this role. I say this a lot too, that for all of our statewide candidates and our local candidates too, that I don't talk about just things I want to do. I can talk about the things I have done. Yeah. And a couple of things I like to highlight. One is some of the stuff I've done with the environment in Fitchburg. We had a goal of 25% of the funding or the energy that we use as a city should come from renewable resources by 2025. So we've been putting solar panels on City Hall, fire stations, the library, slowly working up towards this. And a group wanted to build a solar farm in Fitchburg, and I supported that, helped them get their approvals, and they built that. And they actually said then, city, do you want to actually participate in this? We can actually let you participate a little bit. And I said, yes, we do want to do that, absolutely. And so right now, we're already at about 40% of the energy we use as a city is renewable. So that's very exciting. Another thing that I actually talk about too is diversity. People don't realize that Fitchburg is the most diverse community in Dane County. Wow. About a third of our residents are diverse. Yeah, people don't realize that. And someone who grew up there and has a long history in there, when I first became mayor, I found out that we had never recognized Pride Month as a city, which I thought was pretty embarrassing. And so I recognized Pride Month, And then year 2 came and I said, well, you know, that's great, but I want to up the ante on this. And so I said, I'm going to fly the pride flag outside City Hall as well. And so we did that. And at the end of the month, I was talking to our HR director and I said, you know, we're doing this because we value diversity, we're a welcoming community, this is something that's important to us, and that's a symbol of how important diversity is to us. But that's not just during the month of June, that's a year-round thing. And so I want the flag to stay up and fly year-round. And so for the last 2.5 years, we've kept that up every day.
Wow.
That's cool.
We recognize Juneteenth for the first time, Indigenous peoples, and in my budget that's going to get passed on Tuesday, for the first time next year, Juneteenth is going to be a city holiday as well.
Woo.
That's cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
So Aaron, could you speak a little bit, just briefly on the state funding as far as a local official, and what the lack of state funding is, how that impacts local communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, for communities that are growing, and Fitchburg is, I think last year we were the 3rd fastest growing. We're always in the top 5 lately. You know, Dane County in general most of Dane County is growing. That helps us, but it still doesn't provide all the funds that we need because we're growing so big. But there are communities that aren't growing. I was down in Lancaster, and I was actually talking to someone at an event who worked for the city of Lancaster, and I asked her, I said, you know, Lancaster doesn't have a lot of growth. What's happening to your budget? And she told me that this year they have $1,000 more to spend than last year in their budget because they're not getting any more money from the state. So $1,000, that doesn't pay for just the increases in health insurance for employees. How do you pay for raises for employees? You know, it's not sustainable. It's not possible. It's a broken system. And so there are some communities that are actually even going to referendum just to hire more. A lot of them do public safety referendums because those are more popular, I think, and more likely to pass. But even cities, towns, villages throughout the state have to go to referendum. So you're getting school districts that are going to referendum and your community going to referendum. And, you know, Republicans will say, oh, we cut taxes, but no, you're just making us locally raise the taxes instead.
Right.
And some communities aren't as excited about supporting either the municipal services or the schools. And so now you've got to make sure that you live in a school where they will at least possibly vote yes to keep those quality schools. And not every community, unfortunately, is like that. A lot of them are, but it's just a very broken system because I don't think that the amount we've gotten from the state has gone up by more than like 0.5% over the last 15 years, I think it is, something like that. So if you're not getting more money from the state, you just have to try and find a way to do it locally, and it's just not a sustainable model. It's very frustrating.
Well, thank you so much for coming and helping us. I know some of you are experienced canvassers, already have your packets. Feel free to take off. Anyone who hasn't checked in with me or wants training or whatever, I'm happy to help you. But let's thank Aaron, and we're looking forward to
Thank you.